All right, well, I'll make this as quick as possible for you. Why don't we just jump into it? And I think starting off, if you could just share, kind of where you were at when you found us, how you found us, and then, just go over the full story, and then I'll probably get a couple additional or
I have to think. It's a great question. I mean, it's such a blur the last 3 or 4 months. But I think someone from whether it's you, Christian, or I don't know who does the outreach. I don't know how the hell we got in touch. I mean, thank God we did. But I think someone from your team reached out to me.
Well, I reached out to you after you had answered an ad of ours
Good. Okay.
that you had seen. Yeah. So I think that you
Just one.
probably just put the property under contract. You saw an ad about, our LP leads program. And then we talked on the phone and you did some due diligence. You had your concerns about the other
Oh, definitely. Yeah, yeah,
companies
yeah.
that you'd spent money with. And then overall, you decided to move forward. And here we are.
Thank goodness. Okay. I'm glad you reminded me. All right. My name is Ian Drew. I am the founder and CEO of Voca Property. We acquire and operate multifamily properties. We predominantly work in Texas, Florida, and South Carolina. And we were fortunate enough to work with Christian and his team to take a lead role in our capital raising efforts. And as a result, we were able to close on our first syndication, which is Jackson Place, a 288 unit property down in the south of Texas in the Rio Grande Valley. We raised just under 6 million. We're oversubscribed in the end. We were very happy and very grateful with the work done.
Do you remember where you were at in the process when you found us and what attracted you to PREIshare?
I think that I could not have been potentially anyway a more difficult client. We had a wonderful transaction from a numbers perspective, but we were up against it because as a GP group, we were not experienced. And so we had initially tried a number of avenues on the capital raising side, which weren't getting traction, despite the fact that our forecast numbers were well and truly above market. Included in that, and I think most relevant to Christian and his team, is that we had engaged one or two other digital marketing firms who were poor. I mean, there's no other way to put it. In hindsight, it should have been very obvious to me, should have been an enormous red flag that both of these firms essentially didn't guarantee any results. I guess the way that I view it, and I should have viewed it at the time, but I didn't, and I paid the price, quite literally, is that if they were not prepared to stand behind their services and their ability to generate leads, then why should I? And so, in essence, when we first spoke with Christian and his team, we had had two dismal efforts with other digital marketing firms. One really expensive firm who promised the world, got zero calls, which takes some doing. Second firm who again promised the world, probably delivered around 10 to 15% of the leads that they promised and just disappeared. When it became evident that they couldn't do it, they took our money and they ran. And so I think one of the first questions that I asked Christian and his team was, if we pay you money, are we paying you for performance or are we paying you to try? And Christian and his team was the first firm that with whom we dealt where we were promised a certain number of leads for the price that we paid. And that was a vast difference and turned out to be an absolute game changer. And I would obviously never, ever use a digital marketing firm that in essence you pay them for their effort, quote unquote.
Can you talk a little bit about the process of how the leads came in, what the calls were like, who you ended up talking to through that process?
We, I think, set Christian and his team a really difficult target because we really got together relatively late in the process. As I said, having tried a number of methods which didn't gain traction and weren't successful, Christian and his team were amazing in the fact that they were able to provide a large number of genuine leads to us in a really short space of time. And, that in turn is due to the Christian and his team processes, the way in which, you guys did business. And I could see initially it was just a completely different prospect from what we had dealt with before in terms of the marketing. It was amazing going down and filming on the property. At the time, I didn't realize how valuable that was, but I now see that it was, I think it probably essential in getting the quality of leads that we did. I know that under normal circumstances, it takes a bit of time for a firm such as Christian and his team to warm up and generate those leads and go through a process. We set you guys a really difficult target due to the fact, as I said, that we came in late in the process and we were in a really short space of time. I mean, we're talking days after we had done the sort of preparatory work that we did, we started to get an absolute stream of really qualified, genuine leads. And my calendar was filled with people who were genuinely interested, wanted to invest and, or at the very least, wanted to have the conversation to learn more about the project. And in the end, we got a really high portion of people through Christian and his team with whom we spoke that either were very close to investing or did invest. As I said, in a very short space of time, we ended up well and truly oversubscribed. And had we had, I think, the regular amount of time with Christian and his team that most of your clients have, I think that we would have been multiples oversubscribed. And so being relatively new to the process, and certainly this is the first time that I worked with Christian and his team, absolutely amazing at the speed at which you guys were able to generate the level of interest that you did and the quality of investors that I was presented with. Essentially, it was a game changer for us. And in the end, we raised the capital comfortably, which wasn't the case certainly early on in the process.
I know a question that comes up a lot for us is what the average check size is with a program like this, with a brand new relationship. Do you happen to know those numbers, or maybe if not an average, but just some of the range of the check sizes that came in from the investors that you met?
Absolutely. Look, I was astonished. And bearing in mind that almost by definition, these are new relationships. I thought, the checks would be on the lower size and that we would have to get an enormous number of investors because this is the first time that they had met us. We were a kind of a difficult proposition for Christian and his team in a number of ways, not only due to the timing, but also the fact that we presented you with a GP group, all of which this was our first syndication. And so with all that being said, we were astonished. I mean, the check sizes, we had a minimum of $50,000 and we got a few people in at 50,000, but we got one person in at 500,000. We got several people, 200 to 250,000 range. In fact, one chap was also at 300,000. So I'd say if you averaged it all out, the average check size would have been somewhere in the 1 to 200,000 range, which was fabulous. Again, given that how quickly we had to work and the fact that this was the first time that all of our investors from Christian and his team spoke with me, I was astonished. And it was wonderful.
And I can't remember, what was the time frame again? Was it 30 days or 45 days from the time that we started with you?
It was probably closer to 45, but we worked really quickly, again, because of your timetable in the first sort of 10 to 15 days to, I think, do a lot of the marketing work that probably took longer. Would have to have taken longer under normal circumstances, but I don't want to sound too much of a sycophant here, but you guys were incredibly accommodating. And because of that, we got all of the marketing work done really, really quickly. So we probably had 30 days at it. And really from the word go, the diary just started to fill up. And obviously I was coming from a bad experience, as we've discussed. I was shocked. I had hoped, but didn't certainly expect anything like that. And it was well beyond expectations. Amazing. So if you're thinking of coming in and engaging with Christian and his team, I couldn't recommend it any more highly. We came from a really bad backdrop with other digital marketing firms. This is completely different. Christian and his team got us over the line. We were well and truly oversubscribed. The process was simply exceeded expectations, and I plan to work with Christian and his team on every transaction that I have going forward. It couldn't have worked out any better for us.
And then is there anything that you would want to share with my team that I could bring back to them of, just your gratitude to them so that they can feel good about the job well done?
Christian, your team, the way in which they set up a level of engagement as they did, the fact that we had weekly catch-up calls, everyone listened to my kind of queries and concerns. We were obviously under a lot of pressure and a lot of stress. They were incredibly empathetic, simply reacted to every question and wish that I put to them. They couldn't have been more responsive, and in the end, which really counts, they couldn't have been any more effective in terms of getting it all done. And I think you've got an amazing team. I think you've got a wonderful team there, and they were brilliant to work with, and I look forward to working with them again in the future.
If anybody is thinking about engaging with us, is there any advice that you could give them to best maximize their time, their effort, and the leads that come through?
Yeah, well, I would definitely recommend engaging PREI at the start of your capital raise or before the start of your capital raise, as opposed to what we did, which was towards the end. Participate in all of the marketing activities, which at the time was all new and exciting for us, and obviously has the effect that you want. And just be prepared to field a lot of investor calls, which is exactly what the idea of the whole exercise. All being well, you'll have a wonderful capital raise.
Was there anything that you learned about engaging with leads at that high quantity that you could pass on as advice to others?
That's a great question. For me, I felt that I got better at understanding what an investor wanted to know, wanted to hear from me. And as time went on, I think you simply get better at it because it becomes very apparent what they're interested in and what is just considered fluff. I think that the way in which I approached calls at the end of the process as opposed to the beginning of the process was very different. And I would just say that for a syndicator, it's an amazing process because you will be forced, and without almost knowing it, you will improve markedly in terms of the quality and the content of your pitch. That critical half hour from the start of the process to the end of the process, I felt it was completely different. And it was interesting because it was such a tough exercise for us at the start. We weren't really enjoying it. Towards the end, when it all finished, I almost didn't know what to do with myself. I actually quite enjoyed it because the response was so good and the investors were real, that it became a really almost a pleasurable process, which sounds slightly ridiculous, but it's very true. I think that you will improve by virtue of the amount of leads that are put in your diary, and that'll hold you in good stead for upcoming transactions.
Well, I appreciate it, Ian. Good luck on Jackson Place, and we would love to hear updates along the way. As you get in there and put that thing together and start hitting those returns, let's do a webinar or something and just highlight your success.
Yeah, love to. And I wasn't blowing smoke. I'll definitely be working with you guys in the next transaction. I'm a number of different real estate groups, and both of them have asked me to come on and talk about the capital raise. So I can't do it without mentioning you guys. So I'm gonna give you some free spruiking to both those groups, and hopefully that should generate some bit of business for you.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Thanks, Ian.
All right. See you guys. See you, Nick. Bye.
Good night.